in Miami. Take a listen.
We take an ass whooping and then we get out, literally.
Fair
right?
enough.
Yeah, I mean, they just beat us every way. They were better prepared. They played harder. They were more into it. You can't get it back, so you just move on.
Okay, so also in this game, this happened. I mentioned it earlier in the show. Heat vets, Udonis Haslem making his season debut. How did it go, Jenna? Oh, it wasn't great. 3 minutes, one big dust-up with Dwight Howard, and an ejection. So what happened? Here's Haslem with his side of the story.
If this is the last one, I finish it the only way Udonis Haslem could, with an ejection.
Was that a hint?
I said if. If was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. If. Kim, if.
Is he wearing a friend's hat? Hey, Broussard, should the 76ers be worried about a potential second-round matchup with the Miami Heat?
Yes, indeed, Jenna. And for all of Nick Wright's gloating during the season about, oh, Philly's getting the #1 seed. They get to avoid Milwaukee in the second round. He didn't count on this. All right, meeting the Miami Heat in that second round. I'm not saying Miami will definitely beat Philadelphia, but I am saying that the Sixers would probably be better off facing Milwaukee than facing Miami in the second round. Milwaukee's insane. A bit similar. No, Milwaukee's a bit similar to the Sixers. They're a really good team, but they're a tad bit finesse and they're a tad bit fragile mentally. That's right. All right, and that's where the Sixers are too. When they face Miami, they are going to have their hands full, and for two reasons. 2 words I'll give you. Jimmy Butler. Since Jimmy Butler left Philadelphia a couple years ago and the Sixers found out how tough Butler is when he was there, he is 4-1 against Philadelphia, including 4 straight wins. In those 5 games, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, and Tobias Harris played in all of them. All right, Jimmy Butler will be going for their throat if they meet in the playoffs. He's going to be the toughest player on the floor in that series. And guess who the second toughest will probably be? Bam Adebayo. They're going to throw a lot of different defensive looks. So Philadelphia won't have a coaching advantage. They might be at a disadvantage because Spoelstra's a very good coach. You saw last night, they pushed the Sixers around. They punched them in the mouth, and the Sixers really didn't want any. Eric Spoelstra threw different defensive looks at him, little man, little zone. We know that's what they'll do in the playoffs. And Doc Rivers just hasn't been great at adjusting in the playoffs. We know that. He's got he dropped 3-3-1 leads in the playoffs. That's more than any other coach in NBA history. No one else has dropped more than 1. Doc has more Game 7 losses than any coach in NBA history. In his 7 years with the Clippers, he lost 3 times to lower seeds in the playoffs. Again, I'm not predicting necessarily a Miami victory. Why
not?
But it will be a tough series for the Sixers. Well, when it's time to make my pick, I'll make my pick, and you'll know who it is. I'm just saying, Philadelphia will definitely be pulling for the Atlanta Hawks, Nick, in that first-round series.
All right, so a few things should be noted. Miami can very easily end up the 6th seed. They could be the 4, they could be the 5, they could be the 6. If they end up the 6th seed, then they're on the other side of the bracket as Philly. I'm not hoping. I'm actually not hoping. I don't have a rooting interest in where the Heat land in the standings. The point I'm making is that they could, in the first round, play Brooklyn or Milwaukee and be on that side of the bracket because the standings are so congested. But I am glad that folks are finally acknowledging how good Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat are, because, it just felt to me like when the Lakers were dispatching of them in the finals, we were like, it's a fluky year, it's the bubble, Jimmy Butler, they're the 5 seed, and now it's like, oh, no, this is a great team. This is Spoelstra, Butler, Bam, and Tyler Hero coming off the bench. No, of course, people should be worried about the Heat, no matter where they end up in the bracket. Here's the thing, America. Every second-round series in the NBA playoffs is hard. Some are harder than others. I do think Milwaukee, I think that if you're Brooklyn, you'd rather be playing the Heat than the Bucks in round 2. But either way, if Miami stays in the 4-5, it would be tough. It would be hard. Like there aren't going to be bad teams that are alive when the NBA playoffs are down to 8 teams. And I think the point that Jimmy Butler has proven time and again that he is a winning player, that even if some of the numbers that are declaring Nikola Jokic one of the 10 greatest players ever don't have Jimmy as one of the 30 best players in the league, the fact of the matter is he's a winning player. And we saw it in the playoffs last year. We saw it in the playoffs, hell, the year he was on Philly and they almost beat Kawhi and the Raptors. We saw it then. So, yes, the Heat are a potential problem no matter where they land in the bracket for any team. I don't think they're a specific problem for Philly, though, more so than they would be for Brooklyn or Milwaukee, Brandon.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you guys hit it on the head with everything. The number one thing for me is toughness. You know, you look at UD. UD doesn't play all year. He goes in for a few minutes, and he gets ejected because he's in Dwight Howard's face. Dwight Howard didn't want any of that. And Jimmy Butler is willing to go there every single night. That's the mentality that Jimmy Butler has brought to this organization since D-Wade has left. We're talking about in practice. You hear the stories coming out. The very first practice they had, them showing up 4:35 in the morning, getting extra reps and just pushing each other. So that's the number one thing to jump out. And this team is soft. Like I say it all the time that, you know, Joel Embiid is the most dominant player on the planet right now, but he didn't look dominant last night. And that takes me to my second point, and that's defense. This team is really savvy. They're aggressive. They're well coached. They're smart. Yeah, I'm talking a little defense, Nick, but I'm talking about why these boys ain't gonna make it. It matters to a certain point, but not when we're talking about the Nets. It doesn't matter with the Nets.
Right.
Because like James already
Brandon.
Yeah.
Got it.
But think about this. We got the most dominant player on the court last night, and he didn't look dominant. Why? Because of Bam. Bam was so smart, so savvy, and he didn't send him to the line. That's when Embiid is dominant because he can do whatever on any part of the court, but then he makes it to the line, and they didn't do that last night, Wiles. They didn't send him to the line, and that's why the 76ers should be nervous and not overlook them if they see them in round 2.
Okay, we had 2 people being picked on in this game. The first one was Dwight Howard. And I know Dwight Howard's 7 feet tall, and Dwight Howard wears Superman cape. Dwight Howard is not the tough guy, and we all know it. So I'm not going to sit here and applaud UD for picking on poor Dwight Howard. That's not his role. He's not the enforcer. It's not who he is. The other person getting picked on is poor Doc Rivers. Holy cow, Chris Broussard, my goodness. What did Doc Rivers do to you? This is your favorite coach from last year's Clippers squad. What never mess cross.
He's still bitter.
He let the Clippers down.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, the knives are out. The knives are out. Broussard, do you think that he is at a disadvantage against the Heat? I was just shocked at how much you have abandoned your former, favorite coach of your favorite team, the Los Angeles Clippers, ever since you were a child.
Wild, it's always facts over feelings, all right? And I like Doc. I mean, who doesn't like Doc in the NBA? Everybody loves him, but the facts are the facts. And Eric Spoelstra is a very good coach, and I'm just saying that, look, Doc has something to prove. He's been great this season in the regular season. He's been terrific. He's got Embiid on the block a little more. I love what he's done. But let's see what he does in the playoffs, because he didn't get it done with the Clippers. There's no doubt about that. And, Nick, I'm going to say this, and I give you credit for acknowledging how tough Miami will be for Philadelphia should they meet. I don't think Miami's a great team. All that gloating about, when the Lakers, they're not a great team. They're a team that gives certain groups matchup problems, and one of those is Philadelphia. If they meet Brooklyn, I don't think it'll be a problem for the Nets. I'm not saying they'll sweep them, but Brooklyn's offense will be too much for them. No. So they're a tough matchup for Philly, because Philly has shown to be a little bit mentally fragile in the past.
But you also
they're still relatively young, and they got good matchups for Embiid with Bam.
But you also think they'd be a tough matchup for Milwaukee, right? We just saw them beat. You think they'd be a tough matchup for Milwaukee, right? Okay. Yes. Well, then, so here's the thing.
But not
the 4
Brooklyn.
best teams in the East. Right. Right. So it's not that Miami's not an excellent team. It's that I'm old enough to remember it's over, and it's still over. That Brooklyn's going to run through everybody. I get it. There are no tough matchups for the Nets. I understand they're dominant. They're the defending 3-time champions, and they're going to roll through the playoffs. I get it. I understand. Miami's just a tough matchup for literally everyone else.
Matchups.
Yeah,
Milwaukee and
we'll
Philly
see.
will be decent matchups for Brooklyn. And, of course, the Lakers.
Okay, good. Oh, okay, well, I'm good. I'm glad to hear those are decent matchups. Maybe they could take it 5, possibly 6 games. But I do want to say one thing in Philly's defense. Philly essentially locked up the 1 seed a few days ago. And since then, they've been in something of autopilot. Now, had my buddy Daryl hit me up before the game, I would have said, hey, man, just rest your guys. Don't play them tonight. You've got 2 against Orlando. You only need to win.